We are here where the town of Peak used to be, at the base of Mary's Peak. Nothing remains here anymore, except for the cemetery. And in that cemetery is buried Virginia Davidson. In 1939, she gave an interview of her experience traveling on the Oregon Trail as a 9-year-old girl. This is her story. Father first crossed the plains in 1850 before he was married. He went to California and stayed for a short time, but did not find his fortune. He learned about the way, however, which was a great help to him on his second trip. After their marriage, my parents moved from Illinois to Iowa and then to California in 1864. I was 9 years old then and remember the trip well. There was little sickness on the way. One of the helpers had mountain fever. Grandmother Hill was sick when we started, but she wanted to come so badly, a bed was fixed for her in one of the wagons. They expected certainly to bury her on the plains, but she began to mend, got up from her bed, and lived several years in California. She went back to Iowa to die. The train commonly made about 20 miles a day. The Indians did not molest us, and there was no excitement until we got into Utah. It was very boring traveling day after day in dust and heat. Sometimes we could almost look back to where we had camped the night before. While cooking and the chores were being done, the kids played little games. One evening, my sister and I decided to blindfold one of us and let the other lead her to something to identify, or which way was to camp, that sort of thing. I was leading my sister and told her a big brown dog was coming toward us. My sister said, "There are no brown dogs here." I kept insisting and said, "Now it's standing on its back legs. Can't you hear the noise it's making?" By that time, my sister could hear it and jerked off her blindfold and screamed, "It's a bear! It's a bear!" Some man shot his gun in the air and the bear turned and ran. When the wagon train was crossing the plains, the Indians would visit the campsite to trade for beads and things. I remembered how one Indian wanted to buy me and how frightened I was that my folks might want the horse and blankets that the Indians were offering as trade. He kept adding more things to the pile, and my father finally ordered him to leave. The next day, the train camped by a river, and the women washed clothing and the men hunted. My sister and I took a nap in the wagon while our clothes were being washed. We woke up when we heard a noise as the Indian was reaching for me. I wiggled free and we screamed as we climbed over the wagon seat. The Indian ran away when he heard people coming, and I ran to my mother. Grandfather Hill had a daughter in California and wanted to go there. Somewhere after we crossed the Rocky Mountains, the trail forked. Father finally decided to go to California and took the California Trail, which crossed a corner of Nevada. There was desert to be crossed, which took all night and part of the next day. We came to the edge of the desert about mid-forenoon. We waited until night to avoid the great heat of the sun on dry sand. Father had scouted ahead and came back to warn the drivers to use care to keep the teams from bolting when they smelled the water. I was riding in the front wagon. The drivers turned from the trail in a fan-shaped formation so that there would be no danger of locked wheels. Soon, old Buck raised his head and began to sniff the air. Then the others smelled the water. The drivers got out on the wagon tongues and clubbed the oxen in the face to slow them down, but all were running when they reached the river. After living in California for a while, Virginia and her husband moved up here to Peak. She started a community up here. She built a home, raised a family, and she even ran the post office here for 20 years. For more than 30 years, this was the center of her life. I married Harrison Davidson in 1872. In 1885, we came to Benton County, Oregon, and settled at the northwest foot of Mary's Peak, where we lived for over 30 years. Our place was drained by Bark Creek, which reaches Mary's River by the way of Shot Pouch Creek. There was some good farmland on the place, but we depended mostly on the timber. There was much cedar there, and our income was from the shakes, hand-shaved shingles, and fence posts. I started the Peak Post Office on our place and was postmaster for over 20 years. The route was from Philomath to Harlan in Lincoln County by way of Peak. It was 20 miles of hill route over ungraveled roads, and in winter it was a long, hard grind for 2 mules and a light buckboard. In the winter, the driver was frequently obliged to cut through fallen trees that blocked the road. Well, I'm standing here where Virginia Davidson's home was and the Peak Post Office. It was the same building. About a year ago, I saw this tin can or piece of metal, and it's still here. I don't know if that's from the time of Peak or if somebody else left it here. This area gets over 100 inches of rain a year, and it's drizzling right now, even though it's summer. If you look there in the distance, you can see the cemetery. That's all that remains of the town of Peak. It's hard to describe how remote this area is. Maybe 10 miles from the nearest person. It takes an hour to get here from Corvallis. So there's just nothing around here. Well, it looks like maybe it stopped raining or stopped drizzling. The town of Peak is gone, but Virginia Davidson is still here. And through her memories, we have a chance to see what the Oregon Trail was like for a 9-year-old girl.